Larry tried to kill me.
Yeah. I was so thoroughly disgusted.
I mean, think about it. Why does it make you special to do what you do?
Packers jumping around. They rush four. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line. My goodness.
Rushing four, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground and still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
There's also Brian Clady and Bob Miller. Third and long 3. Going deep. Oh, and he's got Thomas. Goodbye. Touchdown. Here we go. First snap of the overtime. The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him 3 to the 30. To the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first play of overtime.
And pip, and cheerio, and welcome to the show. My name is Mundungus Creevy. I'm joined as always by my co-host Glenn Hauser and Mr. Cameron Parker, and joined today by very old guest Bronco Bill.
Yeah, thanks.
Right here on the 5280 podcast on the MHRT network. We are a fan-led Broncos-based podcast, filling you in on all things Denver Broncos. What's up, the young and the old? How we doing?
Well, I guess the old should go first because, bedtime's right around the corner. Just kidding. Just kidding. But no, doing good.
I mean, I would disagree, but
we should call Mike our English muffin after that introduction.
Yeah, no
He's
kidding.
I'm down.
The thing is, though, he didn't exactly nail the impersonation of a British, person all that well.
No.
No, he really didn't.
He didn't nail it anything.
No.
Wait,
no, I'm
what?
Oh,
yeah.
there you go.
That's
Well,
right.
Who cut a Zigbo?
You know why? Because we got Martin in that trade. That's why.
Wait, they cut him? I didn't even see that.
I
That's
didn't
right.
either.
And he didn't wave back.
So sad.
Mundungus showing the amount of prep that he does.
It's okay. Nebraska players are used to losses this year. So
Ooh.
Wow,
That's
that's coming
true.
from.
I mean, it's true. It's
that's
not as
coming
bad
from
as
Mr. Nebraska.
it's not as bad as Iowa, but still, it's pretty bad.
Oh boy.
So listen, obviously today we are a very, very busy bunch. We've got a lot of stuff going on. So what I'm going to do is just kind of read through the trades we've had. Everybody's, not just ours. I can point all I want. Leave me alone. Okay, so it looks like the last one that happened was the Bills traded with the Falcons. They got Dean Marlowe, who's a safety. Nobody really cares. The Chiefs traded Rashad Fenton, a corner, to the Falcons. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Buffalo and the Colts traded. They switched Naeem Hines and Zach Moss, which is interesting. Denver traded for Jacob Martin. And we'll kind of dig into that here in a second. Jeff Wilson Jr., the running back from the Niners, got traded to the Dolphins. Calvin Ridley got traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then the big one, Bradley Chubb gets traded to the Dolphins for Chase Edmonds, among some other things. Who cares about that one? Chase Claypool got traded to the Bears from the Steelers. And then the one that I don't understand.
No, second round pick, Mike. That one that baffles me. There had to have been a bidding war. I mean, the Packers had to have been involved in that for the Bears to give up a second round pick for Claypool. I mean, that shocked me.
Well, and
when that happened,
that's
I thought
basically
Judy was going to get.
That's
offered
basically
for-
the second round pick they got for Roquan Smith.
Right. It's so true.
It's just like a straight up trade. And then the one I don't understand is TJ Hawkinson from the Lions gets traded to the Vikings.
Love
That's
it,
the-
love it, love it.
I don't get
love
that
it, love it. Oh, I love it.
That's
I mean,
the
I'm
one
not
that
saying it
any
doesn't make sense. I'm just saying, like, to a division rival.
I mean, but that's why it doesn't make any sense, because like you're helping your division rival get better, and I mean, yeah, I get the idea that they needed a tight end, and Broncos' point of view, why not just ship him Albert Okwuegbunam? But that's a separate side point. Anyway, but they decided to go out and get TJ Hawkinson. The Vikings did, and I'm telling you right now, that Vikings offense is scary. Now that the Lions decided to surprisingly acquire TJ Hawkinson in that division, because now you got like Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and whenever Irv Smith can be healthy, you have a pretty nice complement of tight ends now in Minnesota with Irv Smith and TJ Hawkinson. So it was an interesting deal, for the fact that Hawkinson stayed in division, but not only that, probably even went to the better team in that division.
Well, maybe in my opinion, maybe it's because they fear the Packers more than they fear the Vikings. I mean,
Who, the Lions?
Yeah. No, the Bears.
Oh, Bears.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm thinking is maybe that was the case. They didn't want to give it to the Packers for various reasons, or Minnesota offered them more, in a way of draft picks. I don't know, but you're right. It does seem strange that you go within your own division.
Yeah.
Well, I had to wonder if Matt Millen was still the GM of the Lions after they traded that crappy. The speculation is that Irv Smith has probably played his last game with the Vikings, but Cam's right. I mean, this is to not only trade within the division, you're trading within a team that's with a team that is running away with the division. So they are light years ahead of you prior to today, and a top 10 pick gets dumped over there. That makes no sense. It'd be interesting to hear what the explanation is. I'm sure it won't be, completely honest.
Now,
At least we don't have a GM like that.
The one thing I will say though is the Lions, on the flip side of it, do have a lot of ammunition if they wanted to move away from Jared Goff and dip their toes into the quarterback market. Like, so they have some ammunition now if they wanted to move on from Goff and get their quarterback of the future. They can do that, so I think that'll be another interesting story to certainly follow. But I mean, I think one of the other fascinating trades for me is, the team we just beat, the Jaguars, acquiring Calvin Ridley. I mean, it's interesting. People thought it was surprising, that the Jaguars, or just Calvin Ridley was traded. That didn't seem surprising. It seemed like Calvin Ridley was kind of like on the outs, with Atlanta anyway. But I think that, you finally got the chance to see these teams with young quarterbacks finally surround their young quarterback with the weapon that they needed, right? Now, granted, for Jacksonville, they went out and spent big on Christian Kirk and got Evan Ingram and some pretty decent weapons, to be quite honest with you. And then now that you go out and get Calvin Ridley, who we all know is pretty nice route runner, pretty nice receiver, and we all know was suspended for the gambling issue down there in Atlanta. But you go down, you trade him over to Trevor Lawrence. So now you have another weapon down there for Doug Peterson and company. And I'm quite fascinated to see what happens down there in Jacksonville, and especially the mesh overall with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence in the future.
So I was going to say, so the Jags get Ridley, Atlanta gets a 2023 conditional 5th and a 2024 conditional 2nd round pick.
Mm-hmm.
So Ridley wasn't basically.
I don't think it was a second, Mike. I'm
looking at it right there. 2024 conditional 2nd round draft pick on NFL.com. It's right there.
That changed then from the original thing, because it looked like they really gave him away for nothing.
And it was also pointed out that one of the reasons why Ridley got suspended was because he bet on a Falcons-Jags game, and then he ends up getting traded to the Jags.
But because he's suspended, this isn't about this year then, obviously. Not with the Jaguars record.
He's suspended indefinitely right now.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
Mike,
so why would you trade for somebody then like that if they're indefinite?
Well,
Because
I have conflicting information on ESPN.com, right? So I've got
ESPN sucks.
Calvin.
Golly, man.
How dare you? Calvin Ridley for a 2023 fifth rounder and a 2024 conditional fourth rounder. That's why you get him, Bill. You get a first round wide receiver talent who has 1 year left of his contract, who is going to really try to prove himself. And they had an opportunity to get him for, if that's in fact the compensation that I'm reading versus what Mike, I don't think I would have done a second round pick, but a fourth and a fifth for that guy. Absolutely.
Yeah, but if he's suspended indefinitely,
he's suspended this year. 1 year.
Okay, well,
technically it's indefinitely, but Josh Gordon's been suspended indefinitely for like 7 times. So.
Randy Gregory, same case.
We suspended Cam 8 weeks ago, and he's still
he still keeps coming.
I'm like a bunny. I just keep popping out of the woodwork.
All right, so yeah, he's like the Energizer Bunny. So let's go into obviously the big one that affects the Broncos. Bradley Chubb and a 5th round pick in 2025 gets traded to the Dolphins. The Broncos receive Chase Edmonds, a 2023 first round pick, and a 2024 4th round pick. Mm-hmm. Is anybody surprised at all?
I will say I was a little bit surprised that they were able to acquire a first round pick. Now, granted, there were rumors swirling that they were able to, get, or I should say, Peyton. It seemed like he was angling to get multiple first round picks. Which, boy, if that would have happened, I mean, I'm of the mode that, like, we should already kind of build him a statue anyway with the way that he's been drafting and, being able to see all this talent. But the fact that you're able to trade Chubb away, get a first round pick, and then add more depth to your running back room, I think it is pretty fascinating to me that, he was able to angle it that way. And also, I mean, for Bradley Chubb's sake, you're going to go out and, be in a tax-free environment down there in Florida and, get your potential $20 million a year deal, maybe with the Miami Dolphins, and, ball out with Jalen Phillips, who, ironically enough, could have been a Denver Bronco as a trade back into the first round candidate. So the fact that you have that kind of irony, I think is, I think it's just, it's definitely, we say it all the time, right? And we said it a few times on some trades, like it's bittersweet. You never want someone to leave, but the fact that the Broncos certainly seem to get a pretty decent haul, I think is really, it's one that really does set you up for the future. And especially for the Russell Wilson contract, you already lost in essence 2 years worth of first round picks, but you gained a first round pick back in this Chubb deal. So in essence, it's win-win, honestly.
Yeah, and I don't mean to cut anybody off, but Jeffrey Bryan says we got better 1 step back, 4 steps forward. And honestly, I don't even think it's a step back at this point. Like, you have Baron Browning, you've got Benito, you've got Cooper. We're getting ready to have Gregory and Browning come back. I don't know if it's really a step back.
Well, let's look at the moves this year. All right, so we signed Randy Gregory. Our first pick in the draft is Nick Benito, and we moved Baron Browning to outside linebacker. I mean, if that didn't scream, we're not bringing Chubb back, I don't know what did. And, I appreciate everything Bradley did. But as Zach Stevens, tweeted earlier, he said he was very good, but he played 49 of 73 available games. I mean, that says a lot. Not to mention, at 20 plus million, which I'm sure that's what he's going to get, is we have a top tier quarterback. And I know everyone harps on the fact that Russ has this contract and they're always bringing it up. But the fact of the matter is we've had crappy quarterbacks for a long, long time that have made no money, and it's gotten us nowhere. And we've had no promise. If you're going to pay a big-time quarterback, we have Draymond Jones to sign. I would hate to see Draymond walk and give Chubb $20+ million. When we have some of this other depth and other potential from on the edge, I think it's a great trade. Peyton met with the media after, and he did say that he wouldn't have traded for anything less than a first-round pick included. I don't know if that's entirely true. I think that he would have been absolutely mauled if we had kept Chubb and finished 9-8 or whatever we end up. And he had walked for nothing or a compensatory pick in 2024. I think people would have been outraged. It was a great deal, and I haven't checked, but I don't know if we parlayed this 4th round pick we received into the next deal that we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But if I could add one more thing, and I know I'm babbling here, but Cam had mentioned some depth to the running back room. Chase Edmonds, 5'9", 210, 26 years old. He only has 120 yards rushing this year, so he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires this year. 2 touchdowns, but he has 4 seasons in Arizona. This was his first with the Miami. I'm excited about what he can bring as far as competition. Some of the other plays that he can make. His size is really interesting. Short but big. I think I was excited when I saw his name as part of the compensation.
Yeah, I'm just a little concerned when it comes to Peyton's moves. Ever since he got here, we got rid of Von Miller, and now we're getting rid of Bradley Chubb. I mean,
it's genius.
Well, I mean, hindsight 2020. I mean, down the road, but I'm thinking when we drafted Chubb, the idea was to have 2 bookends like a Bosa and a Khalil Mack, like they have it in, to be able to have those bookends, and now they're both gone. My question is, to you guys, George Payton obviously wants to bring in his own guys, and every GM does. I get that, but and Glenn, you did allude to the fact that you said it was a smart move. Why do you think it's a smart move to get rid of those 2 high quality players?
Because on paper, it seemed it was going to be incredible. The dynamic duo was going to be great. And then one got hurt, and then the other got hurt. I mean, the person that stood out the most when they were the dynamic duo was Malik Reed, because he was filling in for whomever was injured at the time. Vaughn was coming off injury, early 30s. We got a 2 and a 3 for him. Bradley
season.
Right. Yes. Bradley going into free agency, not sure if we were going to re-sign him, going to command a $20+ million contract most likely. And you get a 1st round pick plus a later pick the following year and a starting quality running back. Some would argue maybe not starting, but definitely a 53-man roster running back. I think it's great.
To continue what Glenn said, though, I think the reason why it's also such a great move was even before the season, we were rattling off Bradley Chubb's name as a trade candidate just because they signed Randy Gregory to the big deal. They drafted Nick Bonito, and then we were wondering and curious about what is the transition going to end up being with Baron Browning to edge. Well, you mentioned, what is your bookend, pass rusher is going to be right there. I mean, Baron Browning looks like Von Miller incarnate. Like it looks super freaky the way that he is as a pass rusher. And Nick Bonito obviously was 1 game, but like he shined out against the Jacksonville Jaguars in that game, and it just so happened to be Bradley Chubb's last game. And so it was a nice ode to the future with Bonito. But I mean, Randy Gregory, yes, he's been hurt, but go back and watch what he was able to put forth on tape and in the games when he was on the football field this year. He was arguably the best defensive player on that field next to Pat Surtain. He was forcing fumbles. He was doing necessary hurries. Pass rush, was there between he and Bradley Chubb. And frankly, I will even make the point that he made Bradley Chubb better as a pass rusher. And so I think that overall, the pass rush depth made Bradley Chubb expendable, in essence, why they ended up trading him.
Yeah. So Steve Starkovich says it's only genius if it works. What is our depth at outside linebacker now? And correct me if I forget anybody, but I'm going to name everybody injured or not. So you got Randy Gregory, you got Baron Browning, you've got Nick Bonito, you have Jonathan Cooper, you have Aaron Patrick, you have
Patrick's hurt. He's out for the year.
I'm naming everybody.
Okay.
Who's the Kongbo? We got Kongbo. And then technically Jacob Martin is listed as an outside linebacker. And you got Zach McLeod that was just brought up. So we have plenty of depth. And that was one of the reasons why the Broncos were able to pull off the trade for Bradley Chubb, is because we had so much depth behind him. And honestly, if you look at like some of the rankings of the depth players, Bradley Chubb ranked like 3rd or 4th when it comes to outside linebackers because you had Browning and Gregory and Benito just crushing it all season.
And Peyton did say that he expects Browning back for the Titans game. Gregory, probably not.
Yeah. Now, I do. So Dave says Elway needs to go next. God save the king, but he needs to go. He hasn't been a part of the team since the offseason. So
maybe
not exactly sure where else you want him to go. But he turned down a consulting job and is no longer on the payroll of the Broncos.
They still talk to him, but
I mean, yeah, who doesn't?
He hopped on the scooter and
Broadway Joe still talks to the Jets, but he's not making decisions. Elway's off the team. He doesn't have. There's no part of it.
I was going to say scootering around together.
Yeah, I was going to say it feels even longer than that. I mean, really. I mean, the way that he kind of stepped away. So
one of the other trades, obviously, is the Jacob Martin trade. And there are some people that probably don't know a lot about him. I really didn't up front. I know that he's from Aurora, so he's kind of coming back home. And we got
Mike. You didn't introduce this trade very well. You should have said the Broncos.
I'm sorry.
You should have said the Broncos acquired the Colorado kid today.
Oh God, no! I'm not doing that again.
Okay, all right.
So New York the Jets get a 2024 4th-round pick, and then the Broncos get Jacob Martin and a 2024 5th-round pick. And I did some digging. Next Gen Stats says that so far this season, Jacob Martin's been effective as a rotational pass rusher. He's recorded 14 pressures on 84 pass rushes. And so now the Broncos have 2 defenders in the top 10 of QB pressure rate. And that's Baron Browning at 18.5%, which is 4th in the NFL, and Jacob Martin at 16.7%, who's 8th in the NFL. So even if he's not way up there in the rotation, he could be.
What does that mean? What does that mean for Gordon? You think Gordon sticks around at the end of the year? Melvin Gordon, the running back.
What does a running back have to do with the defensive end or outside linebacker?
No, I understand.
Bill!
I was talking about the running back Martin we got.
Martin's
not Martin. I'm sorry. Wrong person. Never mind.
You mean Edmonds?
Yes, that one. What is that? What is that? I mean, because according to Peyton today, he said, we love Gordon. We're going to keep him around. Well, now you're bringing in all these other backs.
Well,
Bill just takes away all my thunder. We're going in a direction, and Bill goes, nah.
All right, I'm done.
We're going back.
No, you're not going anywhere.
No, but to address it, first off, I think the Jacob Martin thing was more about replacing Aaron Patrick to me.
Yeah.
Because I think that he also, from everything I gathered, is that Martin also adds special teams value, and we know that Patrick was, pound the table by Dwayne Stukes to have him on the roster because of his value on special teams. So I think that, that was more of about a true rotational depth piece in everything that he can be able to add there. And I mean, he's clearly shown that he can be, a pretty solid depth piece with what has been given a pretty good Jets defense. I mean, but as far as Chase Edmonds, I actually am quite fascinated. I tweeted it out today, but I mean, I'm quite fascinated to see what they do with him. Because if you look at, his overall snaps count when he was with the Arizona Cardinals, the Cardinals were using him everywhere across the football field. So he was basically almost like a wide receiver / halfback with the way that they were using him. He was out wide. He was in the slot. He was used out of the backfield. The Broncos, I'll be honest, don't exactly have a running back like that. They have a pretty nice, scat back in, Mike Boone, but I mean, I also think Mike Boone has a little bit higher ceiling and everything, at least from what I can tell. But I mean, I don't know though.
Differ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that you are that aggressive though, for me, George Payton was that aggressive, says otherwise with Melvin Gordon for me.
That's my point. That's my point.
So but again,
you don't have a point.
But he's going to go out there and say, but he's going to go out there and say things that, he's not going to go out there and say that Melvin Gordon's on the bubble. He's never going to go out and say that say that publicly.
Right.
But it's just based off of his actions. If he's going out there and signing Latavius Murray and Marlon Mack off the practice squad, and then going out and trading in this Bradley Chubb deal for Chase Edmonds, I think it's basically telling us that, one, he loves the running back position. We should have known that to begin with Javonte Williams. And two, like, he's willing to move on from someone like a Melvin Gordon. And I wouldn't be so surprised if the Broncos are very aggressive in the running back market in the offseason.
So Peyton did, what he said was that Melvin was a starter, and then he immediately backtracked and said he was going to rotate with Latavius. And he said that, Edmonds is just another piece to this puzzle. But like Cam said, I mean, the guy's not going to trash the players. No. He's not going to trash his coach like he said he believes in Hackett. What else is he going to say in front of that? I mean, he's not going to do that. You got to protect your locker room at some, to some degree. So
especially after the Chubb trade.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't like the smoke and mirrors. I just don't like it.
But what was interesting when the Broncos signed Zach McLeod this morning, and everybody's just like, "Ooh, an outside linebacker? Is that is he taking jumps? What?"
Well, and I sent that in the group chat, and Boggins was like, "No,"
and I'm like,
"Come on!"
I'm like, "Is a guy I've never heard of taking Bradley Chubb's?" What's going on here?
No, but I did have a question about Chase Edmonds, because I kind of looked at it and was looking back over his career. He has had snaps or plays at kick returner, punt returner, and I'm not looking for change, but we have started to see a little bit of breakdown in the kick returns, punt returns, whether it's fumbling or people being in the wrong spot or whatever. Are we going to see possibly Chase Edmonds splitting with Montrell kick return, punt return, and seeing more of Montrell on offense?
I doubt it.
Or is this just a depth thing?
I doubt it. Because especially if you have Jalen Virgil in a roster. I mean,
which we haven't seen yet.
Still, but I mean, my guess is that they would probably give it to Jalen Virgil, at one point. But I mean, sure, you have a reliable guy in Edmonds as a insurance policy. But for me, it's just like Edmonds just gives you way more versatility out of the backfield. And like, I think I'm not trying to, step foot into Russell Wilson's mind for a second, but I am kind of curious, did Wilson name drop Edmonds as a player that, to at least be interested in, for the Broncos? Cause I mean, let's talk, the Arizona Cardinals were in his division. And, if you go look at his stats, Edmonds' stats for 2020 to 2021, he almost had, in back-to-back years, 1,000 yards of all-purpose, of rushing and receiving. So, I mean, he's a pretty quality back with what he can be used in, out of the backfield or even, out wide. So I'm kind of curious, was there something Russell saw, and even with this offense or himself out of the backfield, that they can be able to utilize? So I'm kind of curious about, just the overall fit and how they can use him. I will say, though, this could be the spell of Boone, because, I mean, Chase Edmonds' contract is through 2023, and Edmonds won't be a free agent until 2024. So,
yeah. So is there any doubt in anyone's mind right now that Latavius Murray is the number one guy?
Personally, personally, he is running back one. He's a walking 4 yards every single run.
But he's not listed as that because Hackett wants to keep Gordon as number one. He's already said that.
He was asked directly, Bill, what's he going to do with Melvin? So, like, what does that mean for Melvin? He's not going to say the guy's ass is on the bench and he's never going to see the light of day again.
He's also have 1 year.
I did think that it was funny when Glenn and I were doing the neighborhood and Latavius Murray came in and Melvin Gordon's on the sideline. Glenn goes, "All right, now we're going to get a sad shot of Melvin Gordon being depressed on the sidelines." And then it went to Melvin Gordon.
I even did the countdown. I go 3, 2, 1, and they did it. I'm like, oh my gosh! It was like the second quarter, and they put a snapshot on him.
But I mean, can you really blame the coaching staff or the front office for not wanting to put trust in Gordon? I mean, Granted, he's had 2 games where he didn't fumble. If we have to say that, there's a problem.
Yep. Absolutely.
But
And I know he's not going to, nobody's going to come out and say, okay, you're benched or whatever in front of the media. I get that. But there is a way, in my opinion, there's a way you can say, well, that's an evaluation situation. It'll be a game time thing. And I mean, whatever. But to sit there and blow smoke, yeah, he's our number one guy when everybody knows he shouldn't be. I don't like that being a fan. I don't like that.
Well, the other thing too is that
because you start doesn't mean anything.
The other thing too is Gordon's only here for 1 year. I mean, so even though there was the trade deadline that just happened today, I mean, this could even be an audition for Gordon every single game, basically from here on out, because the Broncos could theoretically cut ties with Gordon at any point if it's really just 1 year. And I guess for me, this is a separate point. I was a little bit surprised that the Broncos did not deal Albert Okwuegbunam. That's I think the thing for me, as a separate point. I was a little bit surprised that they didn't trade Okwuegbunam. And I know we mentioned it just sort of jokingly with the Minnesota Vikings and Detroit Lions, and everything, but with the emergence of Dulcich, which has been, to be honest with you, just a godsend, really. Like with everything that we've been able to see with this offense and everything, to see his contribution, and just literally from the get-go, immediately after he was activated from IR, it was pretty incredible. And so the fact that he was able to have his kind of impact on the offense, and with where we were with Albert Okwuegbunam, I was a little bit surprised they didn't trade him. And I think he's another cut candidate, even, in this season. I think he's another cut candidate, for a team to pick up.
Cam, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep him and just maybe try to do something in the off season. He was another guy that Peyton was asked directly about today.
Yeah.
And he said, I know he hasn't played as of late, but, we like him as a player, which is an interesting thing. And he said he's getting better as a blocker. So obviously that's a behind the scenes thing.
Yeah.
And he said, and we are going to need him in the second half of the season. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of presence he has later on. But yeah, his blocking is secondary to a lot of the guys that are ahead of him. And this is a tight end heavy roster.
When you're a healthy scratch 2 weeks in a row, you have lots of time to go, at 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
You have lots of time to go work on some blocking. Right. But honestly, the blocking wasn't even the problem at the beginning of the season. He was dropping the ball all the time.
Mm-hmm. He should have been blocking Dulcich from getting on the field, because this dude is like unreal.
Well, which is a separate point in favor of Dulcich, because Hackett praised Dulcich's blocking, especially in the Jacksonville game. And that was one of the better, running games we had seen, from the Broncos' perspective. I mean, like it was great. And so to see that kind of effort and willingness to, be a good blocker, I think, speaks volumes to where Dulcich is, and to see just the overall productivity is obviously a slap in the face to Okwuegbunam. But I mean, like, it's just something that, I was a little bit surprised the Broncos weren't able to, get a, mid-round pick or something, just basically a wash trade almost.
A 6 or 7, I was expecting.
Yeah. So let's take a step back and take a look at London on Sunday. We ended up coming out of London. Cheerio! Pip, pip, cheerio with a win. The Broncos win. Dude, KJ Hamler, I was on the floor. That was hilarious. He just pops in, pip, pip, cheerio. But the Broncos win 21-17 over the Jags, and we saw some changes there in the second half. The first half was a lot of the same. Either Russ throwing it to the wrong spot or the receiver running to the wrong spot. The offensive line was just getting demolished. And then in the second half, we saw Cushenberry go down. Glasgow steps in. And then the offense, in my opinion, took off. You were able to get Dulcich some long throws. You're able to get KJ Hamler involved in some long throws. The one person we didn't really see a lot of was Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like moving forward, at least for the Titans game, we're going to have Glasgow at center because Cushenberry is out with a groin injury. I swear to God, he got kicked in the balls, but it was a groin injury.
Of all people, I'm surprised Mike's not out with a groin injury. You know,
Right?
another major thing that
Busy guy.
another major thing
Glenn.
that to add to this is the first half also had 10 penalties. I mean, it was disastrous. It was irresponsible. It was undisciplined, and that I think we ended up getting 2 penalties in the second half, if I recall correctly. That's a major difference when you're not giving these guys extra time on the field, extra plays, when you're not having a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. It just, that's something that has to be a major point of addressing, I guess, in the next week and a half.
Have the Broncos turned the corner offensively based on the second half? I mean, we went 98.5 yards, 80 yards, 75 yards, all resulting in, do I dare say it, touchdowns and not field goals or turnovers or whatever.
Knock on wood.
Okay.
Knock on one. Okay.
But I mean, has this team turned the corner, or was that, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it anyways, or was this a mirage?
To quote Letterkenny, allegedly.
Letterkenny.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I mean, in order for me to say it was progress, I want to see it week after week. I think the real conversation is just who's wide receiver 1 now. I know our chat.
Dulcich.
I think the chat has been, a little bit, of some hate, obviously a little bit to Jerry Jeudy, but I think that there is some momentum brewing that Jerry Jeudy is wide receiver 1 on this team as it currently stands right now, and not Courtland Sutton. I mean, he's picked up, he has more yards than Sutton currently right now. And I think that, another point of emphasis of how effective this offense has been Russ not looking Sutton's way. Because that was one of the biggest things, even in the early part of the season, was him just focusing solely on Courtland, with this offense. So the fact that you're seeing Jeudy involved, you're seeing Hamler involved, you're seeing Dulcich now involved, it gets you excited. The one thing I want to have happen is everything that happened in the second half, and that is go up tempo, move the ball around, basically take everything that happened in the Chargers first half and the second half of the Jaguars game, and I think you have a really good offense, honestly. Go up tempo, throw to basically everybody that you can, basically, give it to 9 different wide receivers or different, targets, and, divvy up the ball around as much as you can. And I think you have a really good offense. And I think it'll also help your running game. And I think we clearly saw that. Latavius Murray is a walking 4 yards every single, play. I mean, the guy just has positive yards. And, when they were in the red zone, and this was a huge positive, when they were in the red zone, they converted every single time they were in the red zone. So absolutely, I think in the second half, them going up tempo was a big, big deal.
How huge was it to see Russell Wilson when they got the 21 points from Latavius Murray scoring that touchdown? He's on the one knee just going, yes, yes, yes. I mean, it means a lot to these guys. It really does. And hopefully they're turning the corner. And that's like you said, we got 2 weeks off to prepare. And hopefully this was a stepping stone to maybe make a run. I don't know.
I think another thing too, Bill, is that what it did also was it took some of the pressure out. I mean, you saw even at the beginning of the game, Russ can say he can handle pressure. He's not bothered by it. Right. But that interception told us that dude was tighter than tight. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For them to win.
Right.
Nobody is talking about Hackett getting fired. Nobody's talking about, Russell's Subway sandwiches. Nobody's talking about and I do love the fact that he did the let's ride, because he did that in a mocking way, but the pressure was relieved. They got to enjoy a ride home, even though it was not a perfect game by any stretch. The opponent was not a high quality opponent, but the fact that they were able to win, that valve was released, and they have a week and a half to prepare for what is a quality team in Tennessee. I didn't expect the Titans to make the playoffs this year. I know they're in a lousy division, but I think that's a winnable game for the Broncos, especially if Baron Browning comes back. One problem with the Broncos has been the run defense. You know, they did give up a lot of yards.
Henry.
And they've got Derrick Henry, but you know, it was when Mike and I were doing the game, it was misery during the Jets game, and this game was exhilarating. I was nervous. I felt like a fan again, you know, like the things were happening, and you know, it was exhilarating. And when we were able to win, I felt the pressure come off a little bit. It was exciting.
I got to hit the touchdown thing 3 times. It was very exciting.
But Mike, you got to touch on the Graham Glasgow, you know, his presence and what you think.
Well, yeah, and that was like one of the things for me was like you saw the difference when Graham went in there at center, right? Like, and not to mention Calvin Anderson. Calvin Anderson was great on that left side during the game. We saw a little bit of struggle on the right side a couple times with Miners, not so much with Billy Turner, maybe a little bit, but when Graham Glasgow went in there at center, there was a definite shift. Like you could see that Russ had time in the pocket when they were going to run the ball. They were able to run it up the middle or to the right or to the left. They could go wherever they wanted. And I think that it's interesting that when Russ gets time in the pocket because the offensive line is holding up, then you start seeing the offense start clicking like we thought they were going to. So I think, and I told Bill the same thing, like if we go into this Titans game and they put Cushenberry back in at center, I'm done. I've had enough. Like it's stupid. But he's injured, so sorry that he's injured. But at the same time, like,
no, you're not.
He's injured. So now we get to see Glasgow at center. But no, I hope him all the best. I still think it's a nut injury. You could say groin on your line. But we've been talking since the offseason about seeing Glasgow at center because Cushenberry struggled the last 2 seasons. And so it's like I'm hopeful that we're going to see a more cohesive offensive line that's giving Russ the time in the pocket that he needs.
I think it's an interesting twist here because, and I think you're seeing 2 guys that were really struggling in the preseason that could, I mean, this is just an under the radar thing, help salvage this season, you know, and that being Alex, and that would be and that would be Alex Singleton, who no one is really talking much about. You know, but Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton, the pair that they have become within that defense at linebacker has been beautiful to watch. And Graham Glasgow actually struggled in preseason. I'm sure we all remember that. Like he was struggling bad in preseason. And so I don't know necessarily like, you know, what's up. I would almost imagine that it's because Glasgow is a little bit more of a veteran presence within that offensive line. And he has played center before. So I think it helps the fact that, you know, the transition for him has been a little bit seamless. And, you know, we know that sometimes when you're a center, your duty is to, you know, help in blocking assignments and stuff like that. So I think that, you know, him being inserted in that, you know, center position clearly, you know, basically solidified, I'd say, that offensive line. And so, yes, you definitely don't want to root for injury. You know, you really don't. But you almost have to wonder if Lloyd Cushenberry got Wally pipped, and you know, and basically that they're just going to have to go with they're going to have to go with Glasgow from the time being now because of the way that offense was meshed.
Yeah, my main takeaway was that Cam said duty, but anyway,
you took my joke.
But you know what, Cam, his best years at Detroit, his best season was at center. And the knock was that he was almost too tall for center with a guy like Russell Wilson behind him. But I got to tell you, when they broke huddle and he was marching up there to the ball, man, it looked pretty sweet. The guy was very, very imposing. And to have Miners on one side and Reisner on the other. And like Mike said, Calvin Anderson was incredible. The fact that we didn't even hear his name says how great a job he did at left tackle. I'm excited for the Tennessee game because I think that there's going to be some momentum, even though the bye week is kind of, you know, there's some break, but they're not hearing the chatter.
No.
There's no chatter right now, and I can't imagine unless something is said over the course of this coming week, that's not going to be there.
You know, and this is obviously another point, even with the defense. But how big was that drive for Justin Simmons?
Oh yeah.
That was that. I mean, a lot of people have said it. I said it. That was a season-defining play. And honestly, a career drive for Justin Simmons. I mean, think back to that drive. He had the I'll be honest, questionable taunting penalty.
Taunting shouldn't even be a penalty.
But I mean, so he had the taunting penalty. He had the holding penalty within the red zone, and then a play after, I would almost say a play after that, he makes a spectacular interception where it seemed like Trevor Lawrence didn't even see him, which, I mean, Simmons is like 6'2", 6'3". I mean, it's pretty hard to miss him.
Yeah.
So it's pretty hard to miss him. But he threw it to Justin Simmons' way and making a terrific play that was, I mean, if you were to probably pinpoint what were the two, season-defining moments of that game, it was Russ's John Elway impersonation of that 98-yard drive, and then Simmons' interception. But so it's one of the reasons why I said that was probably one of the most impressive interceptions I think in Simmons' career right now, with the way that he battled the adversity through that drive.
We're talking interceptions. How about K'Wan Williams' interception with a cast on his hand?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing.
So one of the things that I've been talking to Bill about is, we see all these penalties and all these miscues on the offense. Should we start looking more at Justin Outen as an issue rather than Hackett? Because I mean, you look at these teams that have head coaches that are calling offensive plays, right? So look at the Colts, for example. When Sirianni left the Colts and went to the Eagles, you definitely saw a step back on the Colts offense because he wasn't calling plays, but he was part of the scheme. He was part of the planning. He was part of getting the game plan in place. And so part of me is wondering, with so many penalties, is it a preparation thing? Is it an Outen thing? Or is it something that Hackett needs to try to fix?
It's a discipline thing, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but so we look at Fangio last year, right? One of the biggest things we talked about was, why are you focusing just on the defense? Why aren't you splitting your time between special teams, offense, defense? That's what Hackett's doing. He's splitting his time between offense, special teams, and defense, and letting the coordinators figure out, get the game plan in place and help with the scheme and planning everything. And then Hackett's obviously calling the plays. So if the planning part of it and the scheme part of it is where we're struggling, is that an Outen issue?
I mean, we're not privy, but it doesn't feel like Hackett's spending a lot of time with special teams and defense to me. I don't know. And in fact, I'd prefer he stay away from the defense because
from everything we see, he goes back and forth between all three.
Right.
Which is kind of what you want, right? You don't want him 100% over on the offense.
Well, as an overseer,
so if he's splitting his time, he has to trust that his coordinators are putting in place what he's wanting, right? And so if we're failing in that aspect, is it an Outen thing? Should we have more eye on him? Or is it more, nope, it's Hackett, he's the problem?
Well, no,
Hackett literally just finished saying that there's no chatter, and here Mike is starting.
No, but what I'm saying is, obviously we've gotten better. We saw that we got better. But there was still 12 penalties. There's still a problem. So what is it?
You think maybe at halftime that Hackett said something to his coaching staff and says, we need to change this, we need to do this, that, whatever? Or maybe he just needs to be more of an overseer and saying, hey, this isn't the way it needs to be done. I don't know. I'm just wondering how a big change happened at halftime.
Me personally, I don't know what Outen's role is. Because if Hackett's calling plays, or even should we say even mixed in with Clint Kubiak, what is Outen's role? And so for the scheme and the penalties and everything like that, that to me would fall on Hackett. And I think that's also the unfortunate blame is it does fall on the head coach. I mean, like if you're not putting, at the end of the day, you can be a delegator, but if you are the one that's going to make the final decision, if you will, and if you're not putting your team in the best decision schematically, that's going to fall on you every single time. I think the other thing too is, as great as Ejiro Evero is, because of the aggressive nature of the defense, I think it's also one of the reasons why you're seeing the defense, have some of these penalties and some of the things that are just unfortunately gone their way. And I think that's just kind of the hand you're dealt, unfortunately, with being an aggressive, defense with the penalties. But schematically, personally, I would put it on Nathaniel Hackett personally. But as far as just the obnoxious number of penalties, I think, and I brought it before, and we even saw with Damari Mathis against the Chargers. When you are the most penalized team in the National Football League, penalties that don't look like penalties will get called penalties because of your reputation.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I wasn't trying to like assign blame or shame people. But what I'm saying is like, with the amount of crap
Shame
that Russell Wilson and Hackett,
Watch your language, boy.
with the amount of crap that Wilson and Hackett just took over the last like 5 weeks, now that we have a win under our belt, we can kind of take a deeper look at it and say, okay, here's what actually is the problem. So that's what I was trying to get at. It's not just Hackett, it's not just Wilson. What is the issue?
Another byproduct of the win was that we were hearing, the Seahawks fans are just so cocky, and Pete Carroll's a genius, and John Schneider. I mean, oh my gosh, they knew. Then when the Broncos were really, gagging. I'm not saying we made a major turnaround, but we're like, oh, the Seahawks will get the 4th pick in the draft from the Broncos. We'll get the 6th pick in the draft from the Broncos, and today I see. Now it's the 10th pick. So that to me is another thing that I'm paying attention to, because I want to shut these people up. I don't want them to benefit from the Broncos, misfortune and not playing well, and then being able to rub it in our faces that Geno Smith is somehow better than a guy who's likely to be in Canton, Ohio.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think as far as my, number one takeaway offensively, I thought that, with the game, I thought that this was the one game where you truly felt like Russell Wilson was taking over that game.
Yeah.
And not to say that they were, pretty effective moving the football or anything like that. Honestly, I should say, he really won us that game, even against the San Francisco 49ers, doing the drive that he needed to win the game. But this one, you saw drives, drives that, the Broncos truly needed to put points up on the board. So when we were talking about, and this is kind of like just some final chatter, if you will, but like when we were talking earlier about, seeing progress, I think that is one of the biggest things that I think you can glean from and move forward with, even if you're Russell Wilson, and just especially with the offense, is that, okay, we can be able to do this. And Russell is finally starting to get comfortable, and we finally have something, that we can have a semblance of a really good offense if we can operate and have the offense truly go through Russell Wilson, if we can be able to manage it. So I think that, that's probably the biggest takeaway for me. And do I have all the confidence in the world that Nathaniel Hackett is actually going to pull that off? No. Nope. because next week he might actually have, a very rough first half, and again, a great second half. But, I just, so I just need baby steps. I need them to,
Does Wilson need to just take control? I mean, the plays come in from Hackett, obviously. Does he need to look at the player personnel on the other side of the line and go, no, I'm not going with that, and just start taking over and doing the plays that he knows can and possibly will work, and not do what is just naturally called? And I think that's what was happening in that game-winning drive against Jacksonville, because it seemed like he was just he was being Russell Wilson, and that's what we signed up for.
Well, the other thing that I think is just kind of a wild card, and I'm not saying this happened by any chance, but when Rippon was starting, he did mention that the offense was a mixture of Russell, Hackett, and Kubiak, Clint Kubiak. In that Jets game.
Stirring the pot, stirring the pot.
So I'm wondering. I almost wonder. Was it Kubiak that was calling the plays? In that second half, was it Kubiak?
Gary on the phone.
But not Gary. Clint.
Gary's calling on the phone. Run this one.
Yeah,
exactly.
But no, that's just kind of like just a
it's like the jukebox at a restaurant.
No, but Cam, that is a good point, because I mean, if he was, let's just say he was, and speculate, and it works. I don't know what or who was calling the plays in the second half, or who was audibling, whether it was Wilson or whatever.
It was Pat Shermer.
If it's working, no, it wasn't. If it's working, I say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it has been broken for a while until this game. And now we showed what we can hopefully expect.
Yep.
Hopefully.
And on that note, pip, pip, and cheerio. That is the show. Please make sure you like, follow, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can know when we post and when we go live. Also, make sure you tune into our other podcast, the Cluster Puck Podcast, which normally goes live every Monday at 8765. But this week they're going to go live tomorrow because we wanted to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to go trick-or-treating with their kids. So I didn't want to take that away from them because they wanted to do a podcast. So we're doing it tomorrow at 8765, and they cover all things Colorado Avalanche. And then we also have the Wild Wild West podcast on Wednesdays, 7:30, 6:35, 34:30, and then Broncos Breakdown with Bronco Bill every Friday at 8765. And then the Neighborhood with myself and Bronco Bill. Sometimes I sprinkle a little Glenn in there if I need some old person and Glenn and Bill can't be there. And we live stream during the game. So there's not going to be one this coming weekend because we're on a bye weekend. We're guaranteed to win. So it doesn't really matter. And allegedly. And that's where we give our reactions and breakdowns while the game's going on. So make sure you tune into that. It's super a lot of fun. We love you, Broncos country. And the only thing else I could think to say is pip, pip, cheerio.